Like to welcome everybody here. Thank you all for coming for today's presentation, co-sponsored by Voices of Hope Connecticut and the Yale Genocide Studies Program. Presentation by Mr. Arthur Asiimwe, The Genocide Against the Tutsi in Rwanda: Tragedy, Reconciliation, and Rebuilding. My name is David Simon. I'm the director of the Genocide Studies Program and a proud board member of Voices of Hope as well. So it works out very well that we're able to have this moment of cooperation. It's, of course, not just me, in fact, far from it. A number of people who are in this audience are responsible for helping bring this together. I'll start naming them. I probably won't be able to name everybody. Hira Jaffrey up there, Kathy Fishman, Peter Fishman, Joel Zaki, have all played really wonderful roles in bringing this event together. This is a genocide studies event as well, so I'd like actually, before I go any further at all, to begin or continue with an acknowledgement that Yale University and the Genocide Studies Program acknowledge that Indigenous peoples and nations, including Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Chattahoochee, Golden Hill Pagusat, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac and other Algonquin-speaking peoples have stewarded through generations the lands and waterways of what is now the state of Connecticut. We honor and respect that enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations and this land. Let me move from that to a introduction of our speaker, and maybe a short explanation of why we're here, how this event came together. The very short answer to how it came together was through the hard work of the people that I just mentioned, but it's inspired by something, the mission of Voices of Hope and the purpose of the Yale Genocide Studies Program, both of which are to overlap in the objective of supporting research and education, research from the Genocide Studies Program's perspective, education from Voices of Hope, to promote understanding of the processes behind genocide, the Holocaust and genocide around the world and throughout history. So for Voices of Hope, which is I think often associated and has done really wonderful work with bringing awareness of the Holocaust, bringing Holocaust survivors and second-generation survivors in dialogue and in front of students throughout the state. We have in recent years, we as Voices of Hope now, that have been trying to augment our support for programming that puts other genocides in context and in conversation as well. We're motivated by the spirit, by the idea, well, one, embedded in the mission, but also by the idea that we really have a lot to learn. We must learn from these tragedies in our background, in our global background, and also that have certainly local relevance. So discussing the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda is, well, it's not a first step. We've made many steps in this direction already. But in terms of the expansion, in terms of addressing quote unquote other genocides, there are no other genocides. A genocide is a genocide. But in terms of expanding the efforts at education, it's an obvious place to start. And in that respect, we're thrilled to have Mr. Arthur Asiimwe with us today. Today, in the year 2024, 30 years after the onset of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, we are approaching in April in Rwanda. There will be the beginning of a very heavy commemoration period, a time for reflection, a time for dealing with memories and efforts to understand the past and efforts to understand the weight of the genocide that is still with us. Arthur Asiimwe is currently the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Rwandan Embassy in Washington, D.C. Prior to joining his diplomatic work, Mr. Asiimwe served as the Director General of the Rwandan Broadcasting Agency, the national public broadcaster, for over 10 years. He oversaw the transformation of the Rwandan Broadcasting Agency into an independent public broadcaster operating 3 television channels, 8 radio stations, and a strong digital network. His background is therefore mainly in the media space, but spanning almost 20 years, where he worked in print media, broadcasting, and wire services like Reuters, the Associated Press. He also has had a stint in the health sector, where he served as the Director General of Rwandan Health Communication Center under the Ministry of Health. He has a master's degree in journalism from Carleton University in Canada, a master's in public health from the National University of Rwanda, and an MBA with Oakland Christian University. Mr. Asiimwe also holds a diploma in strategic leadership from the Swedish Institute of Management. For the past 2 years, he's been the president of the African Union of Broadcasters that groups together all public broadcasters on the continent. He's a former chairman of the Media High Council of Rwanda and has served on various boards of private local media in Rwanda. With all of that background, I now will turn it over to Mr. Arthur Asiimwe. Thank you for being with us today.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. Am I audible enough? I think I need to start by thanking you all for making time to come and be part of this discussion. I want to thank the Voices of Hope for inviting us this evening to come and speak to you, but also thank the university and the Genocide Studies program at Yale for inviting us to be here this evening. Now, I will need to put a few disclaimers because I'm not a very good public speaker. And I have a very deep African accent. So please, you bear with me. And I tend to speak very fast. So if I'm speaking very fast, just tell me to slow down. But hopefully we'll have a nice evening. I tend to speak for a few minutes, mainly touching on the history of my country, what we went through during the genocide, 1994, but also what we are doing now to make sure that we put our country back on its feet and be a respected nation in the global community. So we started by a positive outlook to say remarkable Rwanda, because remarkable Rwanda, when you hear our story, when you read our history, when you see the issues we went through and where we are today, it's just a remarkable journey. It's a remarkable journey. We know we have a lot to do. The journey is still long, but I think it's short of being called a miracle, because 30 years ago, we were in a ditch, a deep ditch, not even a mere ditch. But today we can, stand in the global community of nations and say we are a proud country. I'll go quickly through the history of Rwanda and what led to the genocide against the Tutsi. Now, for many years, Rwandans were living at peace with each other. We are all Rwandans. We, in our land, living as one, speaking one language, same tradition, a lot of intermarriages, a peaceful African community. But when the colonial system came, which was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that's when the seeds of hatred were planted in our communities, among our people. I'm sure all of you here are experts at history. You know, the colonialists used a very good strategy, which was divide and rule. For me to break into the community, and the Rwandan community was very, very intact. We had our structures, leadership structures. We had, you know, a formal structure of leadership that was in place. And it was extremely intact that for the colonials to be able to penetrate through and divide people, they had come up with a strategy. And that's how they came up with identifying people along ethnic lines. The Hutu, you're a Tutsi, you're a Twa. So that, you know, we begin seeing ourselves along those lines. And before even those lines, those classes were there, but the classes were basically based on economic standing of an individual. You would graduate from one class to the other. For example, the Tutsis were predominantly people who kept cows. And the Hutus were mainly farmers, and the Twas were potters. But you would easily move from this group to another, depending on how your lifestyle has improved. If you have more than 5 cows, you'd move from being a Hutu to a Tutsi. If you have, if you're a Tutsi and your cows are dead, you go to a Hutu. And that was our livelihood. That's what our forefathers lived like. But when the colonists came in, of course, you know, the African societies were still primitive. They took chance of that and then divided our people into those ethnic lines. And so, identifications were now created. So you'd carry an identification of a Hutu, a Tutsi. Then, unfortunately, when the leadership, the post-colonial leadership came up, they also took the same line. So the colonists, when the colonialists left, the post-colonial leadership did not do anything to reverse the trend. And it took this terrible ethnic line of Hutu, Tutsi, reached a point where one group was extremely discriminated and isolated, and the other group was the dominant group. So what the colonial powers left us was a deeply divided society. And it took a political turn when the post-colonial leaders came in and capitalized on that to divide our masses along the lines for their political benefits. And so, you know, the Hutus were the majority, the Tutsis were minority, the Tutsis were minority. So it took a different dimension. So many people in the early 50s, because we are Tutsis and they are few, were killed. Actually, the genocide of 1994 did not start in 1994. It was a culmination of those years of extreme isolation, divisive politics, and killing ethnic Tutsis. Most of our people, I grew up in a refugee camp because my parents were thrown out of Rwanda during those times. Most people went into neighboring countries and grew up from there. When we returned to Rwanda after 1994. So from the 50s, 60s, the country was a country of discrimination and allowing a very big portion of its people to flee because they had no basic rights. So the seeds of genocide, of 1994 genocides, were planted right from the colonial powers, then the weak administration that came in immediately after the colonials had left. And so the ground was fertile for a genocide. So 1994 was a time. Let's take some little water. You've heard this year we're going to be marking 30 years after the genocide. 30 years is a short time. But 1994 was that moment when the evil that had been planted for all these years, almost 50 years of the colonial power, no, more than 50 years, almost 60 plus years after the colonials had left and the previous divisive leadership had gone. 1994 was a climax of all the evil that had been planted for a long time. And the genocide was carried out. I chose to show you, used two illustrations here. This Time magazine, this was the cover page on May 16th. May 16th, 1994. That was the cover page of Time magazine. There are no more devils in hell. They're all in Rwanda. I think that tells you the story. There are no more devils left in hell. They're all in Rwanda. That gives you a picture of what was happening in the country. And then, I think you've heard about General Romeo. He used to be the UN force commander, the commander of the UN peacekeeping forces in 1984. He wrote a very good book also, Shaking Hands with the Devil. And I think also Samantha Power also has a book around the devil. So everything in Rwanda was a devil. The devil had left wherever he is, and he was only in Rwanda. And I think these people were right, because kind of things that happened in 1984 in Rwanda are unspeakable. Not only 1 million people were killed within 100 days, but the entire social fabric of the country was broken down. It reached an extent where, I am from the Hutu group, and my wife is a Tutsi. I kill my wife that I have children with. Kill her because she's Tutsi. Or I am if I'm a Hutu man married to a Tutsi man, I kill my wife with a Tutsi. I'm a Hutu man married to a Tutsi man. My husband is a Tutsi. I kill the father of my children just because of that seed of discrimination that had been planted in these people for a long time. The level of hatred that had been planted in people. When the genocide happened, Rwanda was on its knees. Like they say, the people, I know most of you here are believers. You believe in faith. But for us, at that time, we didn't think there was a God. And yet for a long time, we used to say, God spends his day everywhere else and comes to spend the night in Rwanda. But I think that time we thought God had abandoned us. So the killings were severe. And to make it worse, there was no any international outcry about the genocide. The Americans had just gone through a nasty incident in Somalia, where the American troops were killed. So Americans didn't want to put their foot into this. This was another mess by some senseless African country that we don't have to poke off our nose into this. The French were part of the planning and the execution of the genocide. The Belgians. So the UN was weak. The UN only had the force there, but the force had the mandate of the force could not intervene and stop the slaughter. So the regime of the day had a free hand. The people, the extremists that had been trained for a long time, had a free hand and killed and killed and killed and killed. It was, but like they told you, from my background is media, and one of the stains that the genocide against the Tutsi left for the media landscape in my country is that the media was deeply involved in it. Had the radio not been used, the scale of the slaughter wouldn't have been as big as we saw. But the political leadership at that time had control of the media. You've heard about this radio that was called LTM. It was used as a mobilization tool. You know, they would go and sit in the studios and say, hey, you guys, pick machetes. There are Tutsis hidden somewhere here. Go and finish them. There's a Tutsi that said this, and you know, they're used to incite and fuel people. And you know, for us, in the African setting by then, there's no social media, there's no digital media. Anything that would be said on radio would be like, you know, the truth. So the radio was used as a strong mobilization tool that encourages people to go and carry on the killings. So people sought refuge everywhere. People thought, Rwanda is a very strong Christian country. I would say almost 95% of the, well, not even 95, maybe 98% of the people are Christians. So some, during the time they said, let's go and seek refuge in churches. Maybe in a church, some people will be embarrassed and ashamed to come and kill people. They thought, the devil is outside. Maybe there's a God left in the churches. Let's try and hide there. But nobody survived in churches. And these fellas, because they knew that the community was strongly entrenched in Christianity, they would even encourage people to go in the churches. Go and hide in the churches. On radio, you go and seek refuge in churches. Then once people are piled in the churches, grenades, machetes, machine guns, killed people as if they're killing rats. So at times it's difficult to even find the words to describe what was happening. But you can imagine, I think about 100 people being killed per minute for 100 days, 1 million people dead. The streets were littering with dead bodies. Dogs there, we keep dogs in the US as petty animals that we keep in our homes. But the dogs in Kigali, by the time in Rwanda, had been fattened up because they're feeding on the decomposing bodies. It was a terrible incident. So what happens afterwards? Such kind of mass killings that took place. The most difficult thing is justice. You have hundreds of thousands of people that have taken part in the slaughter. Because the uniqueness about the Rwandan genocide is that a neighbor killed a neighbor. People knew each other. They were living on the same hills. So like almost millions and millions of people have participated in genocide. So how do you bring justice? You have a small number of people that have survived, but they're craving for justice. The society is shaken. There's no hope. There's no sense of being. So how do you bring justice? We're lucky that as the international community looked away, and Rwandans were in this situation. Of course, there was a war going on. There was the war led by the current president, President Paul Kagame, under the RPF leadership. It's this force that stopped the genocide. These guys that stopped the genocide. If they didn't manage to stop the genocide, I think every Tutsi in Rwanda would have been, completely finished. So they stopped the genocide within their means. Now, the process of building a new Rwanda, of course, had to start with justice. And justice delayed is justice denied. So there are two systems. First of all, there was the international community felt guilty and said, you know what, because of what has happened, what we do? Immediately, the UN system, the international community set up the tribunal for Rwanda, the ICTR, International Tribunal Court for Rwanda, which are also not based in Rwanda, it was based in a neighboring country, Tanzania. And we had these masterminds, the key planners of genocide. They had committed the crimes and disappeared. Most of them went to Europe. Most of them had their political sponsors still alive in Paris, in Belgium, and a good number came to the States. Some are being, even up to now, there are some that are still here. And the key planners, the key people that planned the genocide. So this court was supposed to try the planners of genocide. And I think, I mean, in all fairness, the single biggest contribution that the court did was to bring a legal interpretation of genocide and also confirm that indeed a genocide in Rwanda happened and the genocide against the Tutsi happened. That was a very important step, because recognizing it by a court, international tribunal, was very important. And that's a very good legacy that the court left. But the court was extremely slow in bringing justice. Remember, you have survivors that are yearning for justice. You have so many perpetrators still living within the communities. So basically, you're in a fragile situation. So the court came, tried to get all the masterminds or the key planners of genocide. But like I said, it was extremely slow. So for almost 20 years that the court existed, they tried only 70 cases. And at a huge price of money. They spent almost like $1 billion for 70 cases. But remember, we have almost 1 million+ people that were involved in genocide. So what did we do as a nation? We went back to our history as a country and asked ourselves, what do we used to do before in our traditional life? What were we doing before to solve disputes in communities? And so went back to our history and found that there's a very good practice called gacaca. Gacaca was the way, in the pre-colonial days, the early centuries. Gacaca was a format of, if you're in a society and you commit a crime, a council of some elders would sit around a small compound or under a tree, and whoever committed crime is brought before this council of elders, and they say, okay, you have done this and this and this and this, and because of doing this and this and this, then we are either sanctioning you with this punishment. And so because we had these issues, we had so many people that were still living amidst our community and had committed genocide, people who had exterminated families. In Rwanda, there are families that were completely wiped out. Father, mother, children, completely wiped out. Nobody is there. You have stories of children that survived, and no, a 10-year-old with like 3 more siblings is given responsibility of taking care of the siblings. We had so many child-headed families. That was terrible. So they brought in gacaca. Gacaca was, let's try and see how you can bring justice. Gacaca had its flaws because gacaca does not meet international classical court system. You don't have a prosecutor, you don't have a prosecutor, you don't have a defense, like in a normal court system. But gacaca helped us in healing, because perpetrators, survivors, communities sat down, and someone would be summoned before, and people would come and confess and say, I killed 40 people here, I buried them here, please, I ask for pardon. Of course, if you wouldn't be forgiven immediately, of course, you would have to go and serve a sentence. But the biggest contribution for gacaca in our system was that it was a starting step for promoting reconciliation of our people. So gacaca lasted for almost 5 years. And over those 5 years, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cases were tried and completed for a cost that is not even half of what the tribunal had done, almost $40 million. And it left our society at least at peace. When you lose someone and you don't know where this person is buried, you never heal. And people who have gone through this trauma were extremely traumatized. But gacaca brought up an open discussion. People would come and confess, would come and say, this happened, this is how we planned it, and this is what we did. So the committee that was there passes a judgment, whether you're sentenced to 20 years in prison or if you're someone who just came and stole a few items, goats and chicken, you are forgiven. But even opening up and people knowing that, these things, you are the one who killed my person has killed here, person has buried here, was a very important step in beginning this tough journey, extremely tough journey of building a united country that we all wanted and what we wished for people. So you have had these years of extremism. You have a society that is fragile. You have a society that has lost a sense of direction. You have people that are so suspicious of each other. How do you begin building a country? What do you think? How do you begin building a country that has gone through such a nightmare? It was tough, extremely tough. But I think we're lucky. We're lucky because, like I said in the first one of the slides, I think it was indeed true that all the devils in hell had left hell and gone to Rwanda. But then afterwards, I think God said, you know what? How do I compensate these people? How do I reward these people? And I think, in all fairness, I think he compensated us in a way. Because we got a very good leadership. We got a very good leadership that started from the basics. A leadership that knew where they wanted the country to go to. Leadership that knew that discrimination and any form of divisions among our people is something that you cannot tolerate. And so we have, for the last 30 years, we have had a stable leadership that has helped us to progress significantly. So, and one of the things that we put up as a constitution, we put up a constitution that says, you know what? Any form of discrimination in our society is banned. And that has helped us. We put him in some very good principles of power sharing, that every political party cannot dominate the political space. You have to share power with other political parties. So, for example, if I'm from the ruling party, I cannot take more than 50% of cabinet slots. That the Speaker of Parliament cannot come from the same political party as the ruling party. Some of these things, to make sure that we create stability. And that for us has been a very good tool to maintain political stability, but also give a sense of hope to our people. And then Rwanda, if I'll speak about it a little bit, Rwanda is heavy on issues of accountability. Heavy on issues of accountability. Political accountability, economic accountability, we're heavy on that. We don't have room. There's some no-go zones. Because of the experience we went through, we do not tolerate anything that leads us into any form of discrimination. That's one form of accountability. The other form of accountability is that whatever we do, the resources we have as a country, we put it to great use so that we know we are able to transform the country into some, respected and well-developed nation. We are heavy on our unity and reconciliation. We don't see each other as along ethnic lines anymore. We are Rwandan. You ask me, what are you? I'm a Rwandan, irrespective of my background. Because the most important thing is that identity of saying I'm a Rwandan. These are the identities of ours, of our forefathers, brought us no progress at all. And they led us into the ditch. So we see ourselves as one, and it's working. It's working for us very well. And then the other big thing that we do is that we dare, as a nation, we dare. Because of our leadership, we try to think big in whatever we do for our country. Like I'll give you a simple example. I don't know, you Americans, I'm sorry, I'm only 1 month old in this country. I just started my work in January. But I've seen, in Africa, there's, football, soccer. Soccer is a big thing. Here, it's NFL that's big. I hope the people from Arkansas are not, but in Africa, soccer is big. So one of the things, for example, we do is we sponsor one of the biggest teams. You've heard about Arsenal, Manchester United, these teams. We sponsor them not for prestige or not because we are rich, but because we are rebranding our country. And you know, tourism is a very big factor. And tourists are bringing in good money. And so for you to show this image, to rebrand the country, you have to be visible everywhere. So we think big in terms of how can we fast track this journey of transformation? Because we lost so many years. We lost so many years of history. But what can we do to fast track this journey of being, a respected country with people that are at peace with each other, but the people that also have some dollars in their pockets. And so for that, our leadership is always putting us under pressure to think of programs, policies that are transformative in nature. I'm trying to move away from the ugly history of Rwanda and going into now where we are, and what we aspire for the future. So because of this stability that we had for the last 30 years, because of the clean and good leadership we've had for the 30 years, I just put up a few things that Rwanda, that you can even fact check anywhere. Rwanda is marked as one of the safest countries so far. Safest countries in the world. 6th safest country in the world for sole travelers. In Rwanda, you can travel at whatever time of the day you want. As a tourist, any time of the night you want. Nobody will touch you. I think Joe who has been, Kigali knows about this. I'm sure we have heard about, when you Google about our capital city, Kigali, Kigali is the cleanest city in Africa. Very green. And like I told you, we are a very accountable leadership. So most of these countries have suffered a lot from corruption and transparency issues. Rwanda is ranked, I think, one of the top 2 or top 3 least corrupt countries in Africa. It doesn't mean that there's no corruption. There's minimum corruption, but it is, any corrupt government official does it at a high risk, extremely high risk. So many people are locked up for even trying to steal as little as $100. I know a friend of mine was locked up for $500. I know a minister was locked up for $500. So extremely conscious on issues of accountability, because we want that every dollar that comes into the country, taxpayers' dollar or donor dollar, is put to proper use. It's put to the proper project it was brought to do. We have reformed our business environment. We want to attract a lot of business. Rwanda is the second biggest. The ease of doing business. You come to Rwanda and you want to set up a business. Within one day you have a license. One day you have a license. Ease of doing business, because we want to attract more and more investments. And we have been ranked as the 6th fastest growing economy. We've been growing at a rate of almost 8% GDP growth for the past 15 years. COVID hit us hard, just like any other country. But our ambitions was always to grow at least over 10% GDP if we're to reach our aspirations. We have invested heavily in technology, because we know the future is technology. We're making Rwanda the hub for tech hub for Africa. So we have rolled out 4G LTE across the whole country. We're now even testing 5G, because the future is tech. We have our women. This is a very important thing. 52 or 53% of our population are women. Women are majority in Rwanda. So you cannot think of developing a country if your 53% of your people are left behind. 53% are women. So if If you think about developing, you want to bring about inclusive growth for the country, you have to have everybody on board. And so for Rwanda, we've put it in our constitution that for every leadership position or for every structure, at least a minimum of 30% have to be women. So for example, if it's a board of an institution like this one, at least the women are assured of 30%. That's the starting point. Whereas the men are starting from 0, then women have 30%. Then you can increase depending on that. And that's why in parliament, Rwanda has the biggest number of women, the more than men. In cabinet, women are more than men, because if like I said, if you develop a country, you have to be extremely inclusive. And you know the mothers, mothers also, when it comes to issues of leadership, let's eat humble pie as men. They tend to be better leaders and accountable. We've invested heavily in education. Education is big. We still have so many gaps in it, because some of the things takes time for it to build. But we think that our country cannot move fast enough if you don't have a competent critical mass of skilled young people. And that's why, when you come to universities like Yale, we're just wishing to see how can we forge partnerships between such a great institution and some of our universities back home. That is, if you got something like that, that adds value into our vision as a country. And we have, the youngest population, 65% of our population are below 30. So that's why education makes a very important sector for us. We're very competitive in the region. We are positioning ourselves as the hub for Africa. We have invested heavily into a national airline that connects our country to so many other countries. We're building now a new state-of-the-art big airport that will be connecting us to the rest of the world. We have we've been investing heavily in this monster called MICE. MICE is meeting, incentives, and conference. Conference and tourism. And we've invested heavily into this, because when you look at some of these structures, like this is our international conference and convention center. Because MICE is one sector that we have tried in Rwanda as a nation that we should invest in heavy. And we're doing very well in this, because we're second in Africa now. So major meetings are happening now because of the infrastructure we have put in place. And then Rwanda is a place where you can find people that speak French and English. A little bit of Spanish, but French and English, if you enter, trained, skilled people that can communicate well in both languages. We have really invested in that, and that makes us more competitive. So I think I'm winding up, spoken for some time. Yes, we have come from a deep ditch. We still have a lot as a nation to achieve. We still have so many weaknesses within our systems. But one thing we have is a vision. We know where we want to be. And we can achieve this vision with friends. We are not an island of our own. We need friends. Friends in terms of investors, friends in terms of universities like these ones that can help us. But most important, we are positioned in Rwanda as a country where, if you're an American investor and you want to try the African market, if you're an American university and you want to venture into Africa, we say, come and start in Rwanda. Then Rwanda opens you up to the rest of Africa, because we have invested heavily in a lot of infrastructure. So we are a proof of concept for people that want to try things in Africa. Because, and I'm being honest here, Africa is still virgin. There's a lot of potential in Africa. The Chinese have rushed there. The Americans are coming. So the future will be on who gets in and has a very good entrance, or have a very good entry point. And that's what we want Rwanda to offer. Rwanda want to offer Rwanda as a place where universities, businesses, tech companies that want to take opportunities on the continent, you come and we give you everything. We give you infrastructure, we give you the conducive environment, we give you security, we give you everything for you to be able to launch in the wider market. Because we're a small market. We know that we're a small market. But Africa is a big market. And we offer those opportunities. I thank you so much for your time. Hope I've made a few of your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.